They would have thought I was crazy. Feeling anxiety that I have to come back here Monday. This is not good. I just have to figure out what I like to do or what I would do for money. Sometimes I had no money in my bank account. My gas light is on in my car. Having faith that everything will work out. It's all me. We're gonna die on our shield here on this one. Nothing else makes any sense. I think it took me about 8 years. I did ayahuasca. One of the things that came out was that my throat chakra was blocked and I don't really communicate very well. I did stand up for 4 years. My partner decided to separate. We have a 4-year-old son. That was like a Mirko Crow Cop kick to the head. That kind of just killed all my confidence for anything. This is much like a death.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. Great to have you here as always, particularly if you're listening to the show for the first time. For this one, I'm joined by Oskar Gut, an athlete turned fighter, entrepreneur, and coach whose story is packed with lessons in resilience, discipline, and self-discovery. From the basketball courts of his youth to the cage of MMA, Oskar learned the value of hard work, adaptability, and humility. His entrepreneurial journey tested his perseverance, while personal challenges forced him to confront vulnerability, emotional health, and the balance between work and relationships. This is a conversation about growth, authenticity, and what it truly takes to keep moving forwards. I really enjoyed this one. Keen to hear what you guys took away from it as well. Do please let me know your thoughts. A wicked story. And if you could kindly like, subscribe, and leave a review, it'd mean a lot to me, and it means that we can reach more men who are navigating their journey. Thank you so much. I'm Harrison, and this is the Growth Voyage podcast. Enjoy. Oskar, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Most welcome, man. And yeah, the way I like to start these types of conversations is at the beginning of people's journeys, right? I feel like that is where the journey really begins and it shapes us into who we are today. So talk me through your earlier years and the first couple of events that really sparked your own growth journey.
I mean, I would say early, I always learned through sports. I always make friends through sports. All my greatest life lessons have been through like sports or athletics. So I think like high school basketball and just learning what hard work really is. I had a really tough coach in grade 10, which I don't know how that correlates to UK education system, but yeah, just a lot of running, a lot of like you screwed up, you have a punishment, you run, and uh, and so I really that was my first exposure to like hard work beyond what I thought hard work was. And then I had more of that in college when I played on the basketball team there. It was a lot of the same thing, like you're just going to run for all your mistakes, and um, and you learn fast that way. You learn not to make mistakes, and you learn to like quickly um, work as a team and things like that because that's how mistakes happen in the basketball scenario, right? You usually let your team down in some way, um, and then so you get punished for it, which now doesn't seem like people don't do that very much anymore. But I think it's a really good teacher. The immediate feedback of you screwed up. Okay, go run and come back, and we'll try it again.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because I like the idea of, right, it's just more exercise, more running as a punishment, and it's fueling you to become better. The mistakes part is interesting because I found when I was involved in team sports and football myself, people are going to make mistakes, right? But for me, the most important thing was, right, are you trying your best? Are you actually giving 100% work rate? Are you giving it your all? So for me, I think that's the number one most important thing. But are you suggesting that back then it was, right, if you've made a mistake, regardless of your work ethic, you're getting punished?
I think in both cases, high school and college, for me, the work ethic was always praised, regardless if you're making mistakes or not. But there had to be some sort of ramification for your mistake. Okay, you were supposed to be in this position, you weren't there. You had this assignment, you didn't do it. Go run. Okay, don't complain about it. Just go run. Come back, and we'll do it again. And like, so it wasn't seen as a bad thing that you were running, but it was like just had to be something to encourage you. And maybe it wasn't the most sophisticated way. Maybe a therapist wouldn't say that that's the best way. Maybe you should journal about your mistake or something. But it's just a very raw, quick feedback. Um, because yeah, time is of the essence too. So
Mm, yeah, and I guess it sounds like there was a bit of a strategy in there as well, right? So if they've told you to be in a certain position or run in a certain direction, you haven't done it, then it's reinforcing that behavior. So I really see the benefit of that. I think we underestimate how important the role of teachers are early on in our development, particularly on the sports fields. And I remember my biggest role models growing up were my sports coaches and the way they carried themselves. And I thought, okay, I've got to be like this guy, because they're very honest, they're to the point, they enforce discipline. I think it's super important, and it sounds like they played a pivotal role in your journey too.
yeah, for sure, it showed me that I have a few more gears than I thought I had in terms of hard work. And then, so after college, I played some basketball in university, not on the team, but I noticed my ability to compete was dwindling there. So I then I became interested in mixed martial arts, which was a whole other thing. I remember my first week, I signed up for the trial membership, and I happened to show up at sparring week. So like the last week of every month, they did like controlled sparring, which is essentially simulated fighting, right? And I remember I was paired up in some drill against the fence with against the cage with a guy that fights at 135, and I'm 220. And I was like, all right, this will be fine. I know he's been doing this longer, but he's small. And he put me up against the fence and took me down. I was like, okay, I need to learn this then because this is a problem. And that sport gave me so much, just from like you show up every day. Some days are good, some days are bad. And then there was also an interesting camaraderie of like you care for your training partners and you're close to them. I never really hung out with training partners outside of the gym, but you're close to them. You feel like you can talk to them about anything, but at the same time, you're like kind of trying to best each other in physical combat. It's a weird relationship.
Mm. I wonder what got you into MMA in the first place, like what the appeal was. I know for me, it just always just looked like something fun to do. And I know I actually went off team sports because I went from football, and similar discussion to before, where I was becoming disillusioned because, especially in the school setting, not everyone was always giving 100%. And because I was a goalkeeper, I I'd get frustrated. I'm like, come on, like just put the effort in. That's all I wanted. And so for me, rather than focusing my attention outwards, I found that if I went into Thai boxing, only I was responsible for being in the best possible shape for my fights and turning up to training. And I think it's such a great step in, especially a man, but anyone's self development journey, because you're turning up and it reinforces that positive behavior. What was it that drew you in initially?
I think first of all, I'm going to challenge your notion on it being an individual sport because you're still only as good as your team. It's a weird. It's not a in basketball or team sports. It's the performances with the team, but in mixed martial arts or combat sports, your training is with the team, and that is very important because if you have bad training partners that are always hurting you, then you can't possibly perform, right? But then yes, the performances alone, and you have to make sure you're on weight and your skills are good, and that's on you. But there's definitely an odd team dynamic.
That's a great point.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. Why did I get into it? I'm Canadian, so I was a big George St. Pierre fan, of course, and that being one thing. Two, I was just looking for something to be physical with, some sort of new task to be physical with, and then I think the self defense aspect was big too. I did like a little bit of judo as a kid, but I wasn't really into it, and then yeah, I just found like my confidence was through the roof just with a little bit of training. because you're just like, oh, okay, I have an idea now of what to do. And yeah, it changed like the dynamics of like just walking down the street. And I'm a big guy, but I didn't necessarily have that inherent confidence that a guy my size maybe should have.
That's a great point. And I feel as though, especially as a guy, I think there is a lot of resistance, first of all, to turning up to training, perhaps, at least in some of the conversations I've had with people, because they're like, oh no, I'd get smashed and I don't know if I should go. But then I remember in my experience, within maybe 3 months, you've learned like a good solid base of self defense, or if it's jujitsu, Thai boxing, whatever it may be, you've learned a solid base at that point. So I believe that just turn up. The first couple sessions, you're going to suck. You're not going to know anything. A bit like in your scenario when you battled this guy who was 70 pounds lighter than yourself, and he ended up dominating. And this is why, on another point, I love martial arts, because it keeps you humble, and there's a great sort of wave to it. At some points, you'll finish a session, and especially in jujitsu, you'll think, "Oh, I did really well there. Like this guy's belt above me, and hey, I gave him a good go, and oh, I managed to get out of this. I didn't tap out," and your confidence will rise. And then the next session, as you were suggesting there, you can come up against someone half your size, and they will completely dominate you. And yeah, I think it's such an
Yeah.
important part of the journey, man, because I think it just keeps you. I think it teaches you a lot about the ups and downs of life, and every sort of win. Okay, it's wicked, fantastic, but then yeah, there's it's not as it doesn't last forever, and you got to sort of keep yourself grounded. Otherwise, yeah, I think someone else
Yeah.
will shoot you down a peg or two.
Yeah, you just have to get back to the next practice, get back to the next round. I remember recently I was rolling with a guy in my jiu-jitsu club now. His name is Joe, and the first time I ever rolled with him, it was competitive, right? It's pretty even. And then once he got a feel for me, the second time we rolled, completely different. He just smoked me, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so you were just feeling me out the first time." And so it's competitive, but yeah, he's a beast, and I'm always just trying to catch up and trying to best him a little bit better each time. So that's also an interesting thing, that kind of deception. Somebody's kind of just feeling you out, and you feel good. You're like, oh, great, I did great, and then turns out I didn't.
You realize, and I think it takes a while to realize this, unless someone tells you otherwise, but often the best roles, the most important roles for you are the ones where you're actually exposed, and people expose your weak points, and you get tapped out, or you get dominated, because then it's like, okay, right, I know my weak spots now. And then you can use that to then improve your craft, improve your training later on. Whereas a lot of the time, because our ego is quite strong at the start, you're like, oh no, I don't want to, it's very like ego and aggressive. And no, I don't want to be tapped out. Like, what are you doing? But then you're not really learning there. So I think it also teaches you a lot about, put the ego aside, and also teaching you to trust the long game as well, and play the long game, and go into every session not looking to win but to improve. And they're very different things in my experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's that old saying like you win or you learn, right? So I think what was that? John Kavanaugh's. I don't know. That was the name of his book anyway. But um, for sure, yeah, you always learn a lot more. And then eventually, I think as you start to understand that it's not about like winning necessarily, you can forcefully put yourself in bad positions. Like I know which positions I suck at in jiu-jitsu, and if I'm being honest with myself, I'll put myself in those positions first, and then work from there. So that's been my approach more recently, because I have so many glaring weaknesses, and I just automatically will go on autopilot to my strengths, because I'm bigger. Uh, you know I'm in shape. So I can do some things. I can get by on like attributes, but not necessarily on certain skills. So I try to fix that.
Yeah, and I relate to that as a big guy, because you tend to rely on your strength quite a lot, whereas when you reflect on it, you're thinking, okay, how much skill am I actually using Yeah, or am I just trying to push people off? So yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice to anyone starting out, especially, but anyone really doing martial arts. You know your weak spots and then work those, and that's how you'll improve over time. I wonder how important martial arts was then as an outlet for you growing up, right? Just having somewhere to put all this energy, because I remember my first jiu-jitsu session and even Thai boxing, I thought, wow, like if I'd had this earlier on in my life, like how much good that would have done to me. And I know a lot of jiu-jitsu guys especially, they wish that they'd started, you know, since the age of 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking back and I'm thinking, because at school I was always well behaved in class, but then now and then I would do random stuff, random events, take part in them that would get me in trouble, like really random, weird stuff. And I wonder if I'd had that discipline then and I'd had a great mentor in some martial arts, a good coach who was there, and I had something to aim towards, how much of a difference that would have had for my own journey. Did you find similar? It kind of kept you in check and then gave you an outlet, particularly when you're young.
Yeah, I think it gave me the outlet at the right time because I was never a school guy. Like I went to college and university. I started mixed martial arts in university, and I just didn't really care for school. And if I could just do athletics for a living, if I was that good, I would, I just gravitate towards the more physical things. Um, I mean, and that's why my profession, I coach people now. So it helped me. Yeah, it helped. It found me at the right time, which which I think is the important thing because maybe I wouldn't have appreciated it had it not. Right.
Yeah, and I also wonder in the case of like wanting to be an athlete, because that's always what made sense for me. I just always wanted to be out there, whether it's playing football, jiu-jitsu, and now it's towards pro wrestling. But there's something about that movement element. It's just like it just feels so natural. And this is why I'm really keen to discuss on sort of your own drivers in terms of a career, right? Because I think we go through school and we go through university, and it's not always suited to all of us, right? It's very sort of there's a very broad outlook, and the people would try and like fit into it, and it's not. I don't think it's for everyone. I think everyone's got their own needs and their own dreams. And because it seems like the only or the right thing to do, I think we all go down a certain route. And I found that while I did end up going into a profession where I learned lots of skills and enjoyed it, I think the real joy I had was when I left that company and I had a period where I was just a full time athlete because I was doing pro wrestling, I was doing jujitsu,
Mm.
and I was like, wow, this is just the dream life. I don't want to go away from this. This is beautiful. So yeah, talk me through your own dreams and goals then. Did you find yourself being swayed by societal expectations, or did you go for what made you passionate straight away?
First, let me say that I'm very jealous that you're into pro wrestling. Uh, as a kid, I wanted to be a professional wrestler, so that's very funny. Um,
Wow.
Shawn Michaels was my favorite.
What a legend. Yeah. Yeah, he's
Yeah, I
awesome.
know.
My favorite was Kane. Kane and with John
Kane.
Cena, of course, because he was looked up to him so much as a kid, naturally. But then, yeah,
Yeah.
Kane was my guy.
Okay. The big guy.
Yeah, that's
You
it.
like the big guy.
Yeah,
What was the question? I forgot. I got distracted with the wrestling.
yeah. It was. Did you sort of go down, sort of following your passion straight away, or
Right.
did you find yourself trying to conform to expectations, or just try and make ends meet, perhaps?
You know what? Like I went to university or yeah, went to college and then university because my mom at the time thought that that was the only thing. She was like, "You have to go to university, whatever way you get there, it doesn't matter. But if you don't, you're going to end up being like a street sweeper or something, like a janitor, you know." And which at her from her generation maybe makes sense. Maybe it's still exaggerated, but um, like now, I wouldn't even tell my son to go to school. You know, like why bother? Unless you want to be something very specific, something like a doctor, something that needs it, uh, then sure. But um, yeah, there's definitely expectations from my mom, And then now I don't I don't even use what I went to school for. I went to school for sports business and to be like an agent or work for like the Toronto Raptors or the Maple Leafs or those kind of organizations. I have no interest, nor am I even close to getting my foot in the door in that industry. And I couldn't I couldn't see myself dressing up in a suit every morning and going to work and doing the whole corporate nonsense.
That's interesting because it does sound like that was tailored towards what you were passionate about, but then even that you're saying was just far away from what you really wanted to do.
Yeah, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. You're 18, and they're like, "Okay, go ahead, pick what you're doing the rest of your life." And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what I like." And I'm an 18-year-old guy. I like looking at cute girls, and I like playing basketball, and I like. But none of those are careers. Uh, you know. Um, so uh, yeah. So then later, you kind of find it, and I started training, and I got more comfortable with it, and I started to research it on my own. Um, I did after I finished university, I did an internship with a advertising company that I got, and I was terrible at the job, uh, terrible. But they offered me like a role there after, and I just remember telling them like, "Look," and anybody else would have taken it, but I'm like, "Listen, give me the weekend to think about it because I'm not even sure that I want to be here." And then I remember I came back after the weekend. I was like, "There's no chance, no thanks." And my mom thought I was crazy. I'm sure I didn't tell like classmates or anything, but I'm sure they would have thought I was crazy because everyone's looking for a job somewhere out of school, and I was just like, this place just makes me unhappy. And I was listening to a lot of Rogan. It's one of these places where it's a very like progressive place, so you can like listen to music in your earphones. There's like a foosball table downstairs. It's one of these kind of places, and so I was just listening to Rogan 8 hours a day, and telling me to work, take a gamble on myself. And then so yeah, that was like, there's no chance I could take this, and I just have to figure out what I like to do and what I would do for money.
Wow. Yeah, before we get into that, that's really encouraging to hear because I feel as though I say our generation, but the generations ahead of us too, I believe they're turning away from mainstream media. I can't imagine many people our age or younger tuning into the news, for example. And I think a lot of the time we're actually getting a lot of our information and inspiration from podcasts, and they challenge you to think differently, right? You never really hear about these type of ideas in the mainstream. I mean, I don't really tune in anymore, but I feel as though just having this exposure to different types of ideas I think can have a really positive impact on a lot of people. And so it's really pleased to hear that it kind of sparks a different seed in your brain. Whereas because of, like you were saying, the generations before us, it was this narrative of, right, you've got to go down this path. It doesn't matter if it doesn't feed your soul. You've just got to do that because it's all about survival. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it was a big shift in learning just about, I'm going to say, like a more spiritual aspect of things, and just, I don't know, maybe like a I think my biggest growth came after school. That was my biggest leap. And I think now would be the second biggest leap, and we'll get into that in a bit, but I'm sure. But just being out of school and being lost and kind of having to figure out, okay, I don't want to do what everybody else is doing because they seem unhappy. you know, and how can I be happy and still be successful, whatever that means.
Yeah, and I think that's also quite rare to have that realization at that age because you say that after finishing school, so I'm guessing around early 20s still at this point where you've had this realization.
Yeah, I was actually late because I did college and university, so I was like 28, 27, 28.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, I mean, even then, I think it takes a while for people to really break out of it and explore something that pursues them. So, was it a case of you're feeling very lost, and at this stage, that's actually forcing you to look internally? Well, you've almost broken away from this belief system that it's one way and that's the only way, and now you've broken away from it, and now you're kind of just like a lost soul. You're kind of like, okay, well, where where do I go from here?
Yeah, you have no operating system, right? Because you had to shed this operating system that is given to me by like society and my mom and different. And then you're like, well, shit, what do I do? I don't know. And then you're following random people talking on the internet. And you're like, these sound like good ideas. I knew that, like, I remember leaving every Friday afternoon or afternoon from work and just feeling anxiety that I have to come back here Monday. I felt very anxious that I had to come back. And I was like, that's not a good sign. I'm like, I don't know what this is. I don't know if everybody feels this. This is not good.
I mean, just having that awareness though, I feel like so much of the time we're not in tune with what our body is telling us, right? And this is where I think a lot of the time when anxiety crops up and these they're labeled kind of like negative emotions, right? But we tend to like push them away or like do more of the thing that's giving us the anxiety to get rid of the anxiety, but constantly keeping busy. Whereas if we're actually tuned into our body and feel like actually, does this actually feel right for me? And if you haven't had that feeling of like peace or contentment over a long run, then you might not actually be aware of what that actually feels like. So I feel like a lot of the time we're kind of just stuck in this cycle of discontentment and we feel a bit off about something. But because we're so busy, because we're numbing ourselves, we're not open to the signs. So again, I think it's really awesome that you had that realization and you had that insight to put your piece first, which I think it sounds obvious, but I don't think a lot of people do it. I think we'd rather stay following what we've been told and what we think we should be doing, right? So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm learning now that I've always been a bit more intuitive than I thought. And I live in my own head a lot, so that kind of makes sense. But there's been periods of time where I purposely numbed that because I didn't want to feel certain things because they weren't contributing to the narrative that I was going along with.
And I feel as though people listening to this will that might spark something in them, right? And this is where the knock on effect happens because Rogan planted a seed in your brain those all those years ago, and now this is why I sort of started the podcast because it's just exposing people to different ideas. And if you are in that growth phase of your life, and I look at it like a journey, right? So you've lost a job or you haven't taken a job, maybe it's the end of a relationship, whatever it might be. You've decided, okay, that's no longer for you. But then before you get to where you want to be, there's this middle ground. And it can be very lonely, very confusing. There's a lack of like minded people there often in this period. And this is why I feel podcasts are important because it's sort of the only outlet that people have to really explore this stuff on a deeper level and expose their mind to different belief systems. So yeah, talk me through that process then. You're obviously listening to podcasts now, gaining new perspectives on what life could be. Where does that lead you then? And does that lead to you sort of following more of your intuition? And yeah, I'm also keen to jump into how you got to listen to that as well.
I just started asking a lot of questions, like, what do I like to do? What would I do if I had 100 million in the bank? Because you have to do something. I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday, but you have you have to do something. Like, everybody always says, "Oh, I would travel." Okay, but that gets boring and that gets tiresome. So what are you going to do then? I don't care if it's paper mache. I don't Whatever it is, whatever that like fuels your fire, and you wake up in the morning and you know 8 out of 10 times you are happy that you're doing. Because I run my own business. I train people. I'm very happy. There's some days where I just shit. I'm a human being. I don't want to. It's a hard day or whatever. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm very grateful that I get to do this and make a really great living doing it. Because it's not everybody can, or not everybody does. Everybody can, I think. Yeah, so I just started asking myself a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the travel aspect. I do, and I've really thought about this now because I used to think, right, you got to go traveling if you feel a bit lost, and then yeah, I do think that exposure to different people, different belief systems is an important part of the journey. And I know in my case, I got a one-way ticket to South America once I left my job, and I was so present and I found so much clarity because you're not in the system. You're not constantly going about doing things. But I also think you touched upon a cool point there, which is, hey, you don't necessarily need to travel to shift your belief system. And I've met people who have been in the same toxic environment and have still made profound shifts on their mental state, their inner narrative, which is awesome. So I love this idea of asking questions. And it's funny that you mentioned that you wanted to be a pro wrestler when you were younger, because I think one of the important questions to ask, at least in my experience, is right, what did you want to do when you were younger? And what was your favorite toy when you were younger? And I remember for me, I think it was two things. One was a football player and one was a pro wrestler. And I found doing the pro wrestling just sparked something different inside of me. And I believe we're all a creator, we're all an artist until we're told that it's not possible or we should be something else. So was it those questions that then led you to your coaching business then? Talk me through that, and also building that up too, because I imagine, because the best quote I heard was, you don't have business problems, you have personal problems that show up in business. And I can imagine, especially yourself, when you've broken away from the mold, and naturally you would have had resistance there, people saying, oh, are you sure about this, and you should get a proper job. All these limiting beliefs and wounds from your childhood are going to come to the surface. So yeah, talk me through finding that path, but then also the naturally the self-doubt that comes along with that too.
Yeah, before we do that, I have a question. Do you like the good guys or the bad guys in wrestling? The heels or the baby face?
I feel like the heels for me, the bad guys, because, and this is what you see as well, the wrestling fans are very strange in the sense that, because there used to be the whole good guy bad guy narrative, right? You had Hulk Hogan, who was there, the American hero, and then you had the bad guys, the villains. But now it's become a cool thing to cheer for the bad guys and then boo the good guys. You saw it with John Cena a lot of the time. So I think now they're blurring the lines between what a good guy is, what a bad guy is, and there's a lot of like in between people who are really authentic. And I think that's what makes a great wrestler, is that you believe them. You can see exactly what's going on there, not having to fake anything. They're just being them. And I think that's what draws people to pro wrestlers. It's just believable, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was gravitated more towards the bad guys. I felt like they had more freedom to do whatever they wanted to do.
Mm,
Because you could do nice things and you could still be the bad guy, or you just do bad things and you're still the bad guy. But a good guy can't do bad things.
that's true. Yeah, it's a bit more black and white for the good guy. I mean, my wrestling character now, I feel like you have more freedom as the bad guy. As you were saying, you don't have to hold back with anything, and it's a lot easier to be disliked than it is to be liked, right? So if you're a good guy, you've got to do all this work to gain the approval of the audience and other people. For me to get you to dislike me, it can take 2 seconds, right? I just need to insult you once, and that's it. Whereas naturally in human connection, you have to build trust with someone over time, and you can have a relationship with someone for 20 years, and all it takes is one wrong comment, and then your whole reputation is has gone.
Yeah. You asked me about like the buildup of the business. Yeah, I was doing this for like 15 years, training people total, but like my own business for 10. This year is my 10th year, and it's hard. It's yeah, it's a hard thing. I mean, I remember shit. Sometimes I had no money in my bank account. My gas light is on in my car, and I had to drive across town to go see a client that they're giving me money. So I'm like, great, I'll be able to get gas. Yeah. So like things like that, or you're down to your last $100. And I remember I had a friend and a client. He had just had a baby. And I'm like, all right, I got $100 left. Like, let's take $50 and make him a nice little, like, basket for like a baby warming gift or whatever. And it's built up of little things like that, and then just having faith that everything will work out. Because if you don't, this is all just crazy. You're going to give up immediately. the amount of challenges and like the times I've had to rebuild my business and because something's not working, or I had one point in time where like all my clients just took a break or left or whatever. I was like, what the fuck? Uh,
I'm really intrigued by this idea of faith because I know a lot of successful entrepreneurs have mentioned this when reflecting upon their journey, and you need it. I think you need that vision and you need that belief in yourself that's going to work out. And I think it's just accepting like self doubt is going to arise sometimes, especially in the early stages. But I think there's a certain shift in perspective you have. I think it's always just trusting. It's just trusting that, okay, this is the path that I'm meant to take. There almost is a bit of a spiritual aspect to all of that. And you've got to kind of let go. And I feel like when we try and control situations, that's usually when the resistance comes because we're thinking, hang on a sec, like no, like this is I've just built this up, and no, this should go my way. But then that's implying that you're entitled to everything external, and external situations can shift. So how do you develop faith? Is it something that you've always had, especially with your entrepreneurial journey, or is this something that you developed over time, or is it just something that you had no choice but to trust?
a little bit of the no choice. One of my mentors and really good friends told me a long time ago. He's also a coach, and we've worked together side by side for 10 years, maybe close to. And he told me, he's like, "Look, you're unemployable. You're not you." Because I don't like listening to other people, especially when it comes to business and things. I just I'm not I'm not agreeable in that way. And anytime I've had a job, and I've had to have jobs while I was also running my business. That's the reality. And I'm always just like, why am I doing this? I get asked to do something and it just feels like busy work. And it's like, this isn't a real task to do. This is so that I'm not bored, you know? So there's a bit of that. And then a bit of like, I'm not, what else am I going to do? I ran into that same issue this year where I had a lot of like self doubt to the point where I lost all confidence in my ability to coach or run a business. And this is like 5 months ago. And you do a little bit of research, and then I'm like, what else am I going to do? I'm going to go work in a corporate thing or whatever. Like, the confidence kind of gets zapped out of you. We had a conversation a few weeks ago before the podcast, but I was telling you that I went through a separation, and that kind of just killed all my confidence for anything. And then to get that back, kind of put me back in the mindset of like, okay, like we're gonna die on our shield here on this one because there's nothing else to do. Nothing else makes any sense. So there's partly that, and then partly just having some faith.
You mentioned something there where because you're already in the middle of that journey, right? You're already in the midst of it. I love this idea of, well, what else are you going to do? Because like there, you've already gone along this journey, already so far into it. And you look back and, there's no way you would go back there. You mentioned it yourself. Like, no, I'm not going to, especially when you've been working for yourself for that long already, there's no chance in hell you're going to want to go back and like go to that life that you'd left behind and listen to somebody else. You almost have no other choice than to keep on going. And this is where more of the character traits are built. I believe you have to go through that period, that lonely period, that darkness to then reach the other side. Yeah, it's the character traits, and no one can take that away from you. I don't think that's something that you can learn from somebody else. You have to kind of live that experience yourself.
Yeah, you can't read about it. You can't hear about it. I mean, you can, but it's not super helpful.
Yeah, you're not. I always like to look at it as, okay, someone might plant seeds for you, and I've had this on the podcast before where someone's telling me about the lessons they've learned, and I'm there learning the same lessons a couple months later. But you can't truly understand the message until you've really lived it and felt it yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to let it in. It's just not going to be
Mhm.
part of your attention span. So I'm keen to touch upon, because we've touched upon the first part of this journey, right? So kind of following your passion, getting into that, and a lot of limiting beliefs coming up, but you sort of push on anyway. When before we get into the life event that kind of shook your confidence, how would you like reframe these beliefs that come up in terms of you're building something, especially when you're starting a business, you're reaching out to people, you're looking to get more clients, you've got all this resistance. So how did you stay on track there, and how long did it actually take you to start seeing results for yourself?
I think it took me about 8 years out of the 10. And yeah, how do you reframe the beliefs? The way I look at it, and it'll mirror kind of the my life event, my separation that we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a minute here, is it's all me. It has nothing to do with anybody else. It's all me. So, hey, are you actually good at the job? No? Okay, we'll get better at the job, at the nuts and bolts of the actual job. And then, like, are you good at the marketing? Are you good at the, and then it's either get better at it or find somebody that's better that can help you, because, there's only 24 hours in a day, and it's tough. But ultimately, it's all about you. That's also what I like about it. Very much like mixed martial arts, right? And I have a team of people that I can rely on to talk to, but they can't do business for me. They can't train somebody for me. They can't learn more about the craft. And so that's the mindset that I developed
Mm,
from that.
I think that's a wicked point. You can, I think you mentioned mentors there and asking for help. I think that's a huge part of any man's journey. It doesn't matter if it's business, relationships, mental health, whatever it may be. Ask for support, because you're sabotaging yourself if you're not, and it can save you years really, and just really support you with navigating stuff. Like lean on the wisdom of other men. I think is super important. I also think sometimes we have a tendency to over strategize and think, oh, I should, especially with like online coaching, for example, people are telling you, oh, you should market this way, you should do this, you should do this. There's so much noise out there, and you can overwhelm yourself, or you can stay safe in strategizing. Right, okay, right, I'm going to do this strategy, I'm going to do this, but then are you actually doing it, or are you just planning it? So I think that's a really,
Yeah.
really important point, that sometimes you just need to take action. There's a lot of wisdom out there and a lot of intelligent people giving out advice, but at the end of the day, you've got to meet the universe halfway. You've got to put the reps in.
Put the reps in. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's it. It's like with anything. It's like when you start your fitness journey. And this is one of my opinions about the fitness industry. Of course, naturally, the more years you put into it, the more specialized you're going to go into your training. But you can talk about, okay, you should be doing 3 sets of 12. You should be doing 4 sets of 8, 5 times 5. Personally, for me, I love Dorian Yates' style of training, whereas it was one set till failure per exercise, and I had the privilege of training with him myself, which was
Oh,
really awesome, really really cool, super motivating.
that's awesome.
But that's the way I train, and that's my way of doing things. But there's plenty of other ways, and different styles are going to work for different people. And I think when you're starting out, okay, it'll be helpful, leaning upon your advice, for example. And I imagine a lot of the time it'll be sticking to the basics. However, then as long as you're doing something, just get yourself in the gym. Like without going into the gym, it doesn't matter what type of regime you're doing. You just need to get there and put the reps in, right?
I've been saying recently, you can read about push-ups, but you can't get better at push-ups by reading about push-ups. You got to do them. And ultimately, that's something I did stand up for 4 years, and that's what I learned is you just go there with a half-baked idea. And you get used to people not laughing, and that's okay. And that's okay. Most things they're not is not most things are not good. 98%, 99% are not good. And just work and then like taking something that works, okay, identify it, why does it work? Great, let's build on that. Versus, and maybe the not 99% is just not being said in the right way or something. So you still have to give it a chance. But yeah, that's why I loved it, because it's immediate feedback, and it's also for some people and it's not for other people, right? That there was jokes or something that I had where nobody laughed, but then somebody came up to me after and said, "Hey, I like that joke," right? And it's just like, okay, but nobody else liked it, but you
Mm,
liked it. It's weird.
this is really interesting. I'm keen to get into this. And it doesn't matter whether it's stand up, whether it's running your own business, whether it's going to the gym. Eventually, you just got to go out there. And I wonder if a big part of us, there's a sense of avoidance, right? So, in a business sense, we might be doing all the fun stuff. But then I remember early on in my business journey, I was going, actually, hang on, have I actually moved the business forward here? Or am I kind of just ticking things over? And it's like, okay, I know that this is going to scale the business. I know that this is going to push numbers. So why aren't I doing that? And I think there's a subconscious fear there. It's like, oh, what if I don't do that? Then, hey, maybe I won't get rejected. And, if I go to the gym, if I don't go, then I won't look like an idiot or whatever it may be. And then I think the brain's very clever. It's very good at rationalizing your decisions sometimes. And I imagine with something like stand up comedy, you're going to have tons of reasons not to go. But the only way you're going to get better is actually by going. So, was the what was the reason why you started that? And talk to me about that, because I can imagine all of the old childhood wounds are coming out there, especially when you first start doing it.
I did ayahuasca many years before, and one of the things, if you're a believer in chakras, one of the things that came out was that my throat chakra was blocked, and I don't really communicate very well. So I had to find a way to do that when I after the ceremony, and and I've always loved stand up. I like watching it. I like getting into the nuts and bolts of it, of the technique of it, joke writing. So it just seemed like a natural place to put my energy. And yeah, that's where it came from. And then it gives you an opportunity to communicate all those childhood wounds.
Mm, yeah, big time. And I love that you got that message as well that, okay, your voice needs to be heard. And what better opportunity than to literally have a stage where everyone's looking at you and you have no other choice but to take action. And I think sometimes we've got to put ourselves in these situations, even though on the surface they might seem uncomfortable. But then when you've committed to that, you have no other choice but to go. And yeah, it's the same with like fighting and martial arts. When you have that platform, it's like, okay, well, I've got that date now, so I've got to show up. I've got to put the reps in. I've got to turn up to training.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to show up on that day and get absolutely bulldozed. So yeah, super important. And I imagine when you're going out there, there's almost like a confirmation bias there. I mean, talk to me about that first experience then going up there, because I can imagine, you say a joke, and I presume the expectation is going to be they're not going to laugh at everything, right? You tell yourself that. However, there's always going to be some form of, "Oh, okay, shit, they haven't laughed." And this confirms all my childhood beliefs that I'm not funny, I don't need to be heard. And
Yeah.
so I think that's
Yeah.
such a huge risk to take. So I just want to commend that, because I think that's really awesome. And yeah, I think it takes a lot of balls to do that, especially when you've had all this programming going on that you shouldn't be heard, and that's why we've learned it in the first place, right? But talk me through that first experience.
The first time was crazy. It was during COVID, and obviously comedians got hit hard because they couldn't work, because you couldn't do any kind of like indoor dining, any indoor shows. And so this one comedian started organizing shows in her backyard, and under she created like a tent, like a whole thing with and that was my first experience. And you show up and you think you have good ideas for what you know then, and you're like, some of this will be funny, and you don't know what to expect. Like, is this going to be other comedians? This is going to be an audience? You don't know, and 'cause you're a bit naive, and it's mainly just comedians. And so you go there, and usually you go on first or second, because I was the newest one there. And yeah, just the disappointment of saying the first thing that you thought was going to land and it doesn't, and people just stare at you blankly because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing, and you're delusional into thinking like what you thought was funny because there's it's much like magic, like a magician. There's nuts and bolts to it, things that you kind of there's structures of how to do like a magic trick or a joke. And I find anyway, somebody that's more seasoned might say something else, but yeah, it was so disappointing. It's so, and then you're like, how much more time do I have? Because normally you get 5 minutes, right? So you're like, oh, I have 4 minutes and 50 seconds left. Great. And then it's like being waterboarded pretty much, and you're just like, "Fuck, man, I don't know." And then you get off, and yeah, people aren't shitty to you or anything like that, but you're shitty to yourself. At least I was. I'm like, "Oh, why did I do that? It was so dumb. Why did I say that? That was so stupid."
How did you reframe that negative self-talk? Because I can relate to that. I can relate to that. Like you're your own worst critic, and even when especially in the early days, when I first started the podcast, I remember I'd have a conversation, and the first thing, doesn't matter if it was a wiki conversation, the first thing in my mind was, "Oh, you didn't say this," or "Okay, you didn't say this there," and it's always that voice. So I think it's learning to. For me, it was a process of really learning to acknowledge that as okay, right, that's a fear response, and okay, maybe I can review this episode back and look at it from a grounded place and look at it strategically. But how did you reframe that in the moment?
It first of all, it took me a while to go up again. It took me, I think maybe like around 6 months to go up again. But just realizing like I don't know what I'm doing, and maybe part of the 6 months was like kind of loading the gun before I go back, trying to figure out like what is it? What am I trying to do up there? Because it's much different. Like I'll have situations where I'll say something funny to a friend, and when I was actively doing stand up, they were like, "You should talk about that." But then you have to explain something like that's not how that works because you and I have some context. We have years of context. And so that's why it's funny to you. But to somebody that I've never met before, there's no context. So I can't, or maybe you can, you just have to figure out how it works. And so I just had to figure out how it works in my mind and then try again. And of course, it wasn't really any better because then it would have been my second time. And only I found as I started to get more reps in, first of all, you get more comfortable on stage, which is a weird feeling. That took me a while. I noticed when there was a very short period of time that I was doing like 3 or 4 a week. I would only really go out twice a week, 2 nights a week, and I would try to get 2 shows in one night, 2 mics in one night. And the second show was always just easier because you're like, I've already done this, I've already told these jokes. You feel more in flow, and that's the other thing is getting in flow because you're so nervous, you don't even know what you're saying at the beginning. And I'm sure like when you hang out with your friends and you say something funny, it's just in flow, right? You're just telling a story or yeah.
Well, it's the same for pro wrestling, right? Like you're every time I've gone and performed in front of a crowd, my nervous system will go into overdrive, and you get super nervous. And I think this happens with a lot of wrestlers, actually, even the pros now. Some of them they have almost like nervous breakdowns, and then they go out, and then they're a different person. And I always find that the best times or the most fun I've had out there is when I'm in that grounded state, and it's because I've learned how to regulate my nervous system, and I've gone there, and it just feels. You mentioned flow there; it just feels right, and you're not thinking too much about it. You're just in the moment, and I think it's one of the important things I wish they would teach in school, learning how to regulate your emotions. Because I always struggled. We go back to the playing sports at school. I always struggled. I'd always get so nervous. It was only when I let in a goal where I would suddenly be in a flow state because it's like, okay, the pressure's off. Okay, that's confirmed everything.
Mm.
Yeah, there's no more expectations for me. Now I can save the game as a goalkeeper because then it was like, okay, right, I have nothing to lose now. Whereas before, you make up this story in your head. Oh, I'm going to lose my identity. I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to do all these things. And I really want to commend you for going up the second time because I imagine that's harder actually than the first time.
Arguably, yeah.
Yeah, because the first time was so challenging and you've had to force yourself to get up and go. I think that's a real, especially 6 months later, I think that takes a lot of courage to do that big time.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
And I imagine over time you just keep on showing up, and then It's through putting the reps in, right, where you eventually build more confidence. So it goes back to the action piece as well. You can reframe these thoughts as much as you like, but the only way you're going to get better is by doing more, doing more, doing more. So I think that's one of the important messages I got from that. Certainly, there's only one way through, and it's to keep on going.
It's the hard way.
Yes, yeah, that's it. So okay, so we've built up some confidence. Then you've learned to activate your voice and unblock the throat chakra. Or I mean, it's a constant journey, right? But it sounds like that was a significant step in that journey. And did you say it took 8 years to really get your business up and running?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Like I survived COVID. It was get better and better and better slowly, but it's so slow. It's such a slow grind in growing. And after COVID was when it really like I was like, oh, okay, I'm making a great living. Like there's no to quit now would be both a financial mistake and just a lifestyle, going against my own integrity mistake. And yeah, 8 years.
Wow. And was there like a moment where you thought, okay, right, we're established now, like we've kind of done it? Was that a specific moment for you? Because I feel like early on in the entrepreneurial journey, we envisioned this moment of like, okay, right, we're here, we can relax now, we've got the systems in place. Did you ever have that moment, or has it constantly been a grind for you?
Mm, I don't have any systems in place. I have a very good friend who he's very talented at not talented, very skilled in business, and he's built himself a really great business. We joke all the time, we talk business all the time that like he's like you built what you built and you have zero systems in place. You're just coaching people and that's all you're doing. And you built a really great business. And so he's like, what if you actually put systems in place? What would that do for you? And of course, it would, probably double or triple my business. Uh, yeah, so it's been a grind. It's been a grind still. I was very happy to whatever 2 years ago to hit certain financial targets that I had in my head, but there's better there's still better things on the horizon.
That's what keeps you going, right? There's still that vision, and I think it's only really when you look back on it and you look back on these, the past 10 years or however long it's been, where you're like, okay, right, you can see the meaning in the whole journey. And I just think that's so inspiring just to hear you that it took you that long to really get shit going. And it's just so inspiring. And it's also, I think, a good lesson that, yeah, this shit takes time. Like if you're gonna do something, make sure you're passionate about it, because the motivation is always going to be there. No, don't get me wrong. There's going to be some days where, for many different reasons, you're not quite feeling up to it. But then it's your mission, right? Like you've got that goal in mind, and you're going to be willing to. There's always going to be a will to do the work. Sometimes our physical health might not allow it if we push ourselves too much. But I think having that, it's a huge driving factor, right? So yeah, talk me through. You've built up confidence now. You've built up a business, and you're creating a life that you're proud of, at least by the sounds of it. But then you get a second sort of wake up call, if you like. Talk to me about this period.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you're talking about the separation, yeah, which happened back in February. So my partner decided to separate, and we have a 4-year-old son, and that was like a Mirko Krokop kick to the head, uh, for me. And for a while there, you're just dazed. You're like, I don't even know what's going on right now. Again, like kind of once you go through the emotional grief of it, because I understand it more now, but people were telling me like this is much like a death. I was with this person for 9.5 years, so it's such a long time. It was almost as old as my business itself, which is interesting because I entered a 10 years of business and then that ended. So it was like, wow, what a strange world reality that I'm living in. Yeah, and then came a lot of like soul searching of like, how did I get here? And how do I never get here again? How can I be better for a better person for my clientele, my friends, son, most importantly, and for the next partner that arrives. That's been the thing, and one of the things that came from that is like for a long time I was kind of numbing my emotions. I wasn't interestingly that listening to my emotions got me into being an entrepreneur, but then I had to numb them for a long time to stay in it.
Why were you numbing it, do you think? Why were you numbing them?
It's hard. Like the doing it is hard. I was training a lot too. I was training under the Ido Portal method for a long time. For most of that 10-year business venture, and the work and the sacrifice, which taught me something. I wouldn't take it away, but it also took away from other things. It took away from my time with my partner. It took away time uh, maybe to work on business, and definitely a lot of emotional uh, blunting had to happen, right? Like I was drinking so much coffee, it was insane just to do it. And there was times where I was sleeping 4 hours a night, but training 6 hours a day. Doesn't make any sense. Uh, and I enjoyed the training. Again, I like being physical. That's my thing. So it tapped into that for me. Like I get to be almost a professional athlete without getting paid for it. But ultimately, yeah, there wasn't. There had to come an end to that. And then I started to realize that I wasn't listening to my I wasn't communicating with myself anymore. And so the separation, the life event was a real big catalyst for diving back into more internal work, uh, because now I have a handle on the physical, the external stuff. So let me dive back in.
Yeah, it's such an important point. I feel like we tend to neglect the personal stuff sometimes when we get sort of very, I don't know how to say distracted, but when we get very sucked into the life that we're building and our mission, I think it's easy to neglect that side of things. And you mentioned there the coffee as well. I've definitely noticed it in my journey where, yeah, when I'm leveraging caffeine more and it's like afternoon and I'm having two coffees, I was going up to three coffees and it's like, hang on a sec, this is going to lead to burnout. And it did. And I think when you're open to listening to the signs, it can be such a blessing, really. And I know in my case, it was okay, right? This is literally the universe telling me, mate, you need to sort your life out. This isn't sustainable. And I think when you're put in that situation, you're forced to slow down. You're forced to reassess things. And again, I'm so thankful for it because it was like, hang on, I'm not making time for the relationships that matter. I'm not making time for health, the journaling, all this stuff. And this is why I think when you do have these moments, these awakenings, it's okay, right, what's this teaching me about my life that's not sustainable or not working? And if you can catch those signs early, then you can save yourself a lot of pain. But it's so tricky to be open to the signs, super tricky because you're just so in this mission and you're so obsessed with it. Yeah, it will come. I think it will always come back to bite you, right? And I'm really intrigued to touch upon perhaps your driving force during this time because I found that in my case I was working a lot. You know, you finally find your thing, right? And you're like, right, all gas, no brakes. Let's just go into this. But then I feel like there comes a point where you realize, okay, right, hang on, my sleep's not great. I'm not actually getting a lot done. What's actually driving me? And I think in my case, it was often I feel like I have to prove my worth by working this hard. I can't, if I haven't got time for the relationships that matter, it's because I'm, I don't feel like I am enough without the work. And it was a really tricky shift for me to slow down. It was so difficult. Like, there was so much resistance there, even though I knew that is what I had to do and that it all made sense.
Yeah.
It was the resistance was crazy. I was like, I could feel my body tensing up. I'd feel really upset because it's like this identity that, oh no, I'm not worthy. I can't, no, I need to be working. I need to be working. But it doesn't make sense. And, um, it's still a constant journey. There's still a lot of programming to rewire, right? But I'm blessed that I at least have the awareness now of what was going on. Do you think there were some subconscious desires for you in your quest to build this business?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the business, yeah, like just, well, I don't know, you wanna be successful. You wanna show people that, like, this was the right call. Definitely, I wanna show my mom that, like, this was the right call. You should have just trusted me from the beginning. But, um, in terms of, like, the training, so heavily, it was a quest for, like, skill acquisition. They do a good job of, like, trickling down. It's like a carrot stick scenario where you're working towards certain things, and they're very good at getting you there. Ito's team and their style, it's great. I got a lot of cool shit, cool, like, I was able to do cool shit. But then eventually my health started to deteriorate. Like, I wasn't sleeping well, my digestion was terrible, all that kind of stuff. I would say my relationships were strained, which is obvious now. But you know, yeah. So there's definitely a lot of, like, programming around work and working hard. Yeah, and I mean, I did all those things, and now it's a different, like, season where, this year I find I'm not really pushing business overly hard. It's sustained. It's going by and just fine. I don't. I think I'm dealing with the burnout this year of, like, going through all these changes and just taking the time to get to know myself a little bit better again, from, like, an internal standpoint before making any kind of crazy pushes business wise. I just also don't have the energy sometimes, and normally from a productivity porn hustle culture mentality, it's like you're not allowed to do that. Go work. Elon Musk doesn't sleep or see his kids or do whatever. And it's like, yeah, but I don't want that. I would like to sleep and I would like to see my kid. And and I would like to have a partner that I could spend time with. And so, and how can I do all that and still run a business that's healthy? So it's just a different season now, and learning the lessons that I learned from all these life events. The most recent one being kind of the most important one.
For sure. And I think we forget sometimes that we're the creator of our own life, and this narrative that, okay, we've got to keep on working hard, working hard. Of course, hard work's important, but I think we can be strategic about it and just knowing what we value as well. I know for me, I said that I valued relationships and connection, yet I was working all the time. And I said that I valued personal growth, but I'm working all the time. I'm not dedicating time to personal growth. So I think knowing what your values are and seeing if you're living in alignment, and yeah, as you were saying, just listening to your body. If it needs a rest, then rest. And I've learned now, I think slowing down is one of the most important things you can do, even though there's so much resistance to doing it. That's where I think the clarity comes through. So were you aware that there were any signs at all, or were you just so entrenched in this way of living that it just came as a big surprise for you
You mean
when
in
it
the
all?
relationship? In the relationship?
Yeah, and I suppose also your health as well would have taken a toll.
Yeah, the health. Yeah, I'll start with the health because it's the easier one. The health. Yeah, I mean, you notice I was just trying to. It's kind of like being in the middle of the ocean in a rowboat that has holes in it. You're just like, I'm just gonna try. And you have a spoon to empty the water out. That's what I was doing. And so I was kind of just putting band-aids on gunshot wounds, and versus because I didn't want to stop working because I was so tied to the work itself. To the point where eventually I hired somebody else. Like, I hired another coach from Muscle Nerds, if you've heard of them, and I've been working with them for like 2 years now, and really just giving me guidance and on how to chill the fuck out. Partly, obviously, great training, great nutrition, all the stuff, phenomenal. But being like, hey, please don't train today. Please get some sleep today. Please, like, that's what you should focus on right now. And I sent him a message at some point this year, and I just said, hey, like, if I hadn't worked with them earlier on and then had to go through the separation, really don't know where I would be today. Probably not in a great place, but it kind of set a foundation for me to sit on, to deal with, like, these larger issues. I mean, this separation affected my health for sure. I lost like 12 pounds in 3 days. It's crazy because I just couldn't eat. But then it still gives you, like, you can get back to something, right? And you can kind of, okay, this is still mine. I can still control this. And that's been a big theme. You brought it up a couple of times, I think, already. It's just like control. And I realized I don't control much. I don't control much. And what I can control is like me sleeping, me training a little bit, me trying to relax, and like what I'm eating. Those are the main things that I can control and just focus on that. And then everything else just is what it is. That's been the biggest lesson for me this year. It's just like I have no control or little control, very little.
And even your belief system currently, like, yeah, we can shift those, but we're not in control of our subjective experiences of the world, especially when we're younger, and how those play out later on in our lives. It's so fascinating, man. And I also really appreciate this the other lesson there of, okay, just learning to recover. You forget, and I've definitely learned this lesson too. You forget that professional athletes, they're training all the time, they're doing all this cool stuff, but when they're not doing that, they're resting, they're playing video games, they're watching TV. Whereas if you're going 100% in your workouts and 100% in your business, that's not even resting. And even scrolling on your phone isn't resting, because your brain is just so engaged in it, and it's just constant. And eventually you're not going to be open to the signs. You're not going to be able to, yeah, learn anything. I think it's just such an important lesson in slowing down. So I really appreciate what you've learned there. And you mentioned having this structure or support system in place really helped you deal with this life event. Talk me through that in terms of your mental headspace there, because that is a huge life shift, massive, massive life event. At one point, you believe you'd be with this person for the rest of your life, and then it just switches. So, talk me through how you sort of dealt with that and the recovery process that took after that, because your whole world has shifted at this point.
Yeah, I think from a hiring like coaches standpoint, that helped me build certain foundational things that I could lean on to continue on. And then I'm a big believer of the, you're the five people you spend the most time with. You're the culmination of those people. So, one of my mentors always says that like if you hang around smokers and you don't smoke, you're eventually going to smoke, because that's how it is. You get influenced. So I have a really solid, and I didn't really appreciate it until now, because I haven't gone through anything this big of an event. And yeah, like friends, very close friends, staying up with me on the phone. Fucking, they had their own shit to do all day, and then talking to me at 11 p.m. at night. They're falling asleep on the phone, waking up and going on a hike at 8 a.m. Just finding time for me uh, to help me go just navigate through. And for me, talking is big. I have to talk things out and then hear something back. Not always, but it's nice to hear something back sometimes, because you get another perspective, you know. And I heard a variety of great perspectives that were both like confirming me at whatever point in the journey that I was in, of that separation, and then some that were immediately kind of the counter to what I was thinking at the time. Like when it first happened, I was like, "Oh shit! Well, I want to fix this." And I had a few people in my circle be like, "Maybe this is a great thing. Don't be surprised if this is a great thing." And it's not a commentary on my partner or I. It's just maybe this is just a great thing, and you just have to let it kind of just simmer a little bit, and you'll see that it's a great thing for everybody involved. And yeah, ultimately, yeah, it's been a huge blessing. I call it now like the second best thing that happened to me. First thing being my son for sure, and then
Mm.
this is the second best thing that happened to me.
That's super powerful. And at the time, I can imagine that tendency to fix. It's like, no, like this is my identity. Like this is my, the ego's under threat there, because it's like, no, hang on, no, like this is my partner, and we have this. And it's only once you step away from that, you look back on it, and you can reflect on the lessons learned. And again, so important, because how easy would it have been for you to like blame yourself, and it's my fault that this has collapsed, and all this negative self-talk, perpetrating this narrative. And yet you've got this glimpse on it now, which is perhaps, and this is more of a spiritual perspective on it, but hey, this was meant to happen. The reason why this happened, and again, this will become clearer and clearer and clearer as life goes on. But I feel as though what happens is you look back on this event and you go, oh, okay, that's why that happened. And this is why. I had to learn the lessons here because it's prepared me for this next season of my life. And I think it's only once you're taken out of that, you're like, okay, actually, no, perhaps this was the right way to go. But it's only once you're out of that where you realize it. It takes time to make that shift, I believe. Yeah.
It does, and I had to go through all the blaming myself and all the things that you mentioned. I had to go through all that too. Part of it was like forgiving myself for the failures that I had. Also apologizing to my ex partner for the failings that got us here, and that was part of it for sure too. And then just other challenges, right? Like just navigating the new reality. It's a weird thing, and it's okay. It's okay that it's weird. Neither one of us has done it before, and I definitely haven't done it before. So it's a struggle.
How did you learn to forgive yourself?
I don't really know, man. Honestly, I don't think saying it was enough. Yeah, I don't know, man. I might have to sit with that question for a few weeks, but maybe I haven't fully. I don't know. I think okay, I'll say this. Maybe identifying where I fucked up or where I failed, and then making a conscious effort, and then being active and not passive in fixing it going forward for my son, for my friends and family, and for the next person. Because that's if I repeat the same mistake, fuck, you know.
I guess it's also a process of thanking yourself for the lessons and being grateful for the awareness. And I think the fact that you've taken responsibility for everything is just so empowering, I believe, and such a crucial part of the process. And it's a really tricky thing to do. But I think once you take responsibility, you can then forgive yourself because when you haven't taken responsibility, then yeah, the forgiveness isn't going to be there because you're going to be constantly fighting this narrative in your head, right? So that's a great point too. And yeah, you mentioned your kid there. So talk to me about that and how that sort of shapes your perspective on your own life and your own mission. Because I think we start off as men. I can't speak for everyone, but it starts off like, okay, it's me and I want to build this mission and I want to do this stuff for me. But then I can imagine once you've had a kid, it expands, right? And suddenly the mission isn't just your own goals, but it's one big collective, right? So talk to me about the role that he plays in your life now.
I get caught in this trap too. I'm not really any different, but I try to keep in mind that he's actually teaching me more than I'm teaching him. And in the morning, I typically we'll walk the dog together, and he's 4, so he's sometimes he's walking, sometimes I'm carrying him while I'm holding the dog. But I'm always impressed by the way he walks, and sometimes he'll walk in like different ways. He's not just walking in one way. He'll have like 4, 5, 6 different styles of walking, like a little bit of a strut, or like a skip, or like a sideways, or like tumbling on the grass as we're going along. And it's just always something different, very childlike, very playing, always not overly serious. He can be a bit moody, so sometimes, but he's usually a happy kid. And just bringing me back to like letting go of some adult shit. I'm always doing adult shit, and he's always doing kid stuff. And sometimes it's okay to just play. Like the laundry can wait. Sometimes it's okay to just play. And so he brings me back to that, to being a child more so. Because that being an adult is very heavy. There's always some shit to do, and it's exhausting. And so it's such a blessing to have somebody to be like, hey, Papa, can you come play with me? And it's like, yeah, man, yeah, yeah. I'll drop everything. Let's go play.
That's beautiful. And it's so important. It's so important. You remember that we're all kids in adult bodies. And if we don't give ourselves that time to have fun for our creative outlets, then I think that's going to eat away at us over time. Like we'll end up resenting not only other people, but ourselves as well, because we've abandoned that part of ourselves. So I love that he's teaching you all these cool lessons as well. And yeah, I think when we do look back, it is going to be it's going to be the small moments that we look back on. For you, it's going to be these interactions and playing around with him and making those memories. So yeah, I think there's so many lessons from your story, Oscar. Really appreciate you sharing all of that, and being so open about it, because it's yeah, there's so much to learn, not only from your story, but just the way you've sort of carried yourself through it and the way you've taken responsibility. I think that's such an important part in the man's journey. Becoming a man is learning to take responsibility for your actions. And I think you've also been a great inspiration for just taking action, right? Throughout all of your life, it's just right, doing the thing, doing the thing, doing the thing. Of course, sometimes we do need to slow down, but I feel like now it'll be really interesting to hear about where your journey goes from here, because you've got all this valuable wisdom that you wouldn't have got otherwise, and now you can integrate the action piece that you've always been great at with this slowing down and learning to enjoy life and get your priorities in order. So I think it's a really exciting period for you going forward.
I appreciate that, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, most welcome. Been wicked to have you on. We'll move into the closing traditions now for the podcast. So if you are tuning in, use our live chat feature, shoot your questions to Oscar. In the meantime, we've got two questions before the guest questions. These are the same questions we use for every episode. So the first one, nice and simple, it's a song recommendation.
Ooh, a song recommendation. There's an artist called Kota the Friend, Kota the Friend, and he's got a great song called Michigan, like Detroit, Michigan. I don't know why, just been feeling it lately. It's kind of upbeat, positive. That's been most of my song choices lately. Is more conscious rap and some dance music and stuff like um, EDM type music, but just a lot of positive voices.
Nice. I didn't. Yeah, I feel like I've still got a stigma in in my mind about rap. Like I've got this perception that it's all negative and it's all like, yeah, it's all like violence and sex and yeah, very aggressive. But yeah, sounds like it's been a positive outlet for you anyway.
I think it can be, man, and it depends on who it is, and that still exists for sure. But it's nice when you can find something that's like growth oriented and positive and that kind of thing.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. And the second question is a book recommendation.
Book recommendation. You might stump me on this one. Okay, I'll give you this one. Full disclosure, I haven't finished it yet. It's about I wish I knew the title. It's called The Hand. It's called The Hand, and it just talks about like an evolutionary biologist talks about the evolution of the hand and what it means for us and why we got here in the first place, and how essentially this is an extension of your brain, just like your eyes are part of your brain. This is still part of your brain. Um, it's an interesting book to read. I like learning about like where we came from and how we got here because this is also crazy. I'm talking to you through a computer. It's insane.
Yeah, I'll add that to the Growth Voyage playbook. I've got a nice collection of all the recommendations the guests have offered. And it is wild. Like when you take a step to think about it, we're kind of just in this weird simulation and we're just making shit happen. Like when you actually take a step back, it's really cool. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it is.
The fact that we can just create anything we want to, which is awesome. What we'll do, we'll head until the live chat. Keep the questions coming in. We've got one from James, which is, what is the biggest lesson you learned from your marriage? And I think that's a wicked question. I think it can catch you off guard sometimes, just completely out of nowhere. I've spoken to quite a few people now who've just like they're saying, yeah, like 7 years, 8 years. One was 13 years. So yeah, what was the biggest lesson for you?
I'll say a couple of things, but they're all the same thing. Doing the work. People say that often about many a thing, but nobody's ever really particular about what the work is. It's a very like ambiguous term. I think the work is like actively communicating and being active in general. I find once the communication wears down, then it gets harder and harder to stay active with the person if you start to know them less and less, and then throw a kid into the mix and throw like just life responsibilities into the mix, and then you just don't relate anymore, and it has to almost become like brushing your teeth or like working out or like meditating or anything. You have to make time for it. I think Jordan Peterson talks about it. Yeah, I think he says like 30 minutes a week or something for a couple. They should talk. They should spend time communicating, which is doesn't seem like a lot of time, but if you're super busy with a kid and all this and life and careers, then that could be a lot. That could be a lot of time for you. So that's what I would say is the biggest thing, and then just staying active with like with your partner still, regardless of the other things that are happening.
Really, really appreciate that. It's going to be super helpful and such an important reminder. I can't imagine like having a kid and that's always going to be the priority, right? It's always going to be about the kid, about the kid. It's always something that still needs to be nurtured and watered, right? And yeah, I'm sure at some point I'll experience that, and I'll be listening back to this with open, very very yeah, very wide ears for sure. So yeah, that's a wicked point. And we got one from Alexi over here who says, "Yeah, if you didn't go into the coaching business, what would you have become instead?"
Uh, I probably would have. Shit, man. I don't know. I'm more of an artist at heart. So either, I mean, as a kid, professional wrestler, but also comic book artist. I wanted to be. And then I think if I had done stand up much earlier, I probably would have stayed with that. I really enjoy it. It's very good for my brain and for my heart. So yeah, probably that.
Wow. So you've learned to enjoy it over time.
Yeah, because nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit what you say. That's what I've learned. And that whether it's on Instagram or here or wherever, nobody gives a shit. And so just go say it. Just go say it. And God, as long as it's not incredibly offensive, because then you might get punched in your face, which is also fine if that's what you want. But yeah, just being able to connect with people on a deep level. Like there's this great Louis C.K. Um, speech that he gave at George Carlin's. It's like a memorial for George Carlin or something. And he said, kind of the first time he broke into the kind of the person that he is now, the material that he creates now, he he just went on stage and he was really authentic with himself. He had already been doing comedy for like 15 years or something, and then he was just really authentic. And he said something along the lines of like, "My wife and I don't have sex anymore because our baby won't stop crying." And then he goes, "Now I know why they throw babies in the garbage." That's just so honest. And of course, there's like the twisted thing at the end there, but you can feel how he's feeling, and then you can feel, and then people in the audience can also feel that way because this is a common thing. It's a common human relationship thing when you have a baby and things change, right? And so people that are in that place can connect. And when people laugh really hard, you're like, I connected with them because we share the same thing. They get it.
Yeah, it's a shared human experience. Again, yeah, I can just imagine it's super difficult. Everyone having different senses of humor, and you look at the variety of comedians out there. There's just so many. They're all so different, and they've all got
Mm.
different people tuning into them. So it's a real art, and I just love how you've ended up enjoying it despite doing it because you hadn't been speaking enough, you hadn't been being seen enough as well, and I think that's really really awesome. And it's just interesting as well how without sort of being seen before, you kind of have been on this like journey of okay, right, let's try and be seen, let's try and be seen. But then I think a lot of the time we look for that external approval, that external validation, but it's the internal journey where we really grow, and it's that forcing yourself to do something, which has been a game changer in your instance. So yeah, Oscar, really really appreciate having you on, man. Appreciate you being
Likewise,
so
Harrison.
so open, man. Being awesome. Where can people find you if they're interested in the work that you do or following your journey?
Yeah, you can I have a website, Oscar OskarGut.com. You can reach out to me there. I have an Instagram. I'm sure there's not anybody else with that same name. So um, yeah, you can reach out to me there or just follow me there. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for reaching out. You've been awesome, man.
Yeah, again, real pleasure, man. And I really think people will learn a lot from your story. And yeah, it's certainly enjoyable for me. So yeah, thank you so
Awesome.
much, buddy. And thank you
Thanks,
to
brother.
the live audience for tuning in as well. Great questions. And we'll see you next time.